Hey, what's up, all my duckies out there? I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'm coming at you with DuckTales, the 2017 reboot series, with Season three's Episode 3, titled Double O Duck In You Only Crash Twice. James Bond references out the wazoo as you see the characters, Red Feather, who in the original series was a character called Feathers Galore, which was based off of a James Bond character called, well, Pussy Galore, which, yeah, and Odd Feather, who was based off of Odd Feather, who was based off of Odd Job. So, whereas Red Feather looks nothing like her 87 version, or was it 87 or 86? Original DuckTales version. Odd Feather looks exactly like his original version. And the whole premise behind Double O Duck was the fact that you had this whole situation where Launchpad was taking on these agents of FOWL, and as a secret agent, because he looked so much like an agent of FOWL, he was used by Shush, who was the opposition to FOWL, led by um, a good organization. They were a government organization, counterterrorism organization, basically. And Launchpad was inducted into it because he looked so much like an agent, so that he could infiltrate everything. That's where a lot of the basis behind this episode comes from. Not to mention that basis actually is what ended up creating Darkwing Duck, because they originally wanted to have a spin-off series where Launchpad continued on as Double O Duck, fighting against FOWL, but that ended up being dropped because of situations with James Bond and all that. You can't just have a title Double O because that invokes James Bond. But they ended up just creating a new kind of character based off of Darkwing Duck, because there was always this whole thing of, oh, maybe it should be Scrooge who's an undercover vigilante at night, or maybe it was Donald, and Donald has his own superhero persona called Papa Nick, which is very popular in Europe and all that good stuff. So ultimately, they went with Darkwing Duck, and there's so much lore behind this concept, and this episode takes so much of it and just melds it together into one big James Bond fueled reference. And they go in hard. They go in hard with this one. But let's jump into the actual review. 3 minutes of recap and just trivia knowledge. If you want to click off now, I won't. I won't blame you for that, because it's just a recap now. It's just a review now. But I really love the concept behind all of this, because it created so much more after the fact. But as we jump in, we see Launchpad undercover as Double O Duck, with Dewey as his wingman, singing a very interesting James Bond-esque song that you always hear at the beginning of every James Bond movie, just not performed by a woman. And he ends up being stalked by Odd Feather, or Odd Duck, who ends up being taken out by Dewey. And Launchpad ends up encountering Red Feather, who he can't remember what the password was because he's Launchpad, and he ends up botching the mission, only for it to be revealed that it was a VR game. Well, an AR game, an augmented reality game, which I love that, because it's just like, that would explain why it's like that. Why it's such a parody of James Bond, because it's nothing more than a video game, and I love that. But Scrooge is none too plussed on being in a place like this, because it's always like, oh, they just want me money. It just wants me money. And Webby tries her best in order to entertain Scrooge while the boys have another go at the game. However, we come to find out, mostly because you should have already known, the mascot Funzo was in truth the Phantom Blot the entire time. So of course this place is run by FOWL. Uh, who the fiendish organization for world larceny, which I don't know why I remembered that. I forget so many other things, but I love anagrams. But we come to find out that currently Black Heron and Steelbeak are there working on a special project. But with Scrooge McDuck in this place, their plans have the potential for being revealed. So their mission, as given to them by Director Buzzard, is to get Scrooge and his family out of there so that what they're working on isn't revealed. We also come to find out that Black Heron has found one of Isabella Finch's lost relics. Well, something that she was, searching after, and that's the third eye diamond, which she actually plans on using as an intelligence ray. At the moment she's got it set to where she can make people smarter, but she wants to make people dumber. She's used it on rodents, which has created the Rescue Rangers, another, Disney afternoon series. Chip and Dale and the Rescue Rangers, if you know Chip and Dale. They had their own series show, and it was fun, it was nice, and I would love to see it come back. But they used it on these rodents, made them super smart, so that's the Chip and Dale and the Rescue Rangers origin, but they want to make Scrooge dumb. That way they can get around him more easily and steal the world from out from under him, since he's the world's most powerful and richest duck. But Black Heron sends Steelbeak out to get them the F out of there. So while Webby introduces Scrooge to Skee Ball, which has a gold miner theme, which causes Scrooge to very much want to partake in it, since it reminds him of his youth, Launchpad is determined to do his best in the game, not noticing that they're being stalked by Steelbeak. So, he doesn't want to mess up again and let Dewey down because best friends and all that good stuff. They're able to take out Odd Duck once again, and they're able to give the password more properly to Red Feather. But instead of meeting the original boss for all of this, they end up meeting Steelbeak, thinking that he's a part of the game. So they engage in a card game, but neither Steelbeak or Launchpad are smart enough to figure this out. Steelbeak is actually a Darkwing Duck villain, but was always an agent of FOWL. And he's a lot dumber here than he originally was, but the creator said that the idea is that Steelbeak slowly becomes the competent villain that'll one day face off against Darkwing Duck, which I would love to see in a spin-off. Darkwing Duck, I need me some of that. But ultimately, this just breaks out into a fight, with Steelbeak trying to take out Launchpad and Dewey, with them not realizing that this is happening in real life. But ultimately, they end up being captured, still thinking they're in VR, with Launchpad trying to figure out how to get to the control panel across the hall, seeing some scrap over in the corner. Meanwhile, Black Heron has managed to perfect the intelligence ray in order to reverse the polarity and make people dumber, whereas Launchpad and Dewey end up being rescued by the Rescue Rangers, who somehow escape their confinement, crafting a makeshift ship out of the scrap that was in Launchpad's cell, shooting it out to the button across the hall, freeing the two of them, with Launchpad thinking it was all thanks to him figuring out the puzzle. Meanwhile, Black Heron is berating Steelbeak because she freed him from prison to make him her muscle. And whereas Steelbeak thought they were partners in all of this, Black Heron sees him as nothing more than a stooge and a buffoon. But Steelbeak is tired of being called stupid and demeaned by Black Heron, so he uses the intelligence ray to dumb her down, taking control of the operation. Meanwhile, Scrooge is all caught up in the winning and gaining all the tickets, and he's become obsessive. So he's become a ticket baron mostly. And whereas Black Heron is spotted by Dewey and Launchpad in the hall, and they think, oh, okay, we can take out the villain right then and there. They end up being surrounded by Steelbeak and his goons. So a fight breaks out, and they bump into the intelligence ray, reversing the polarity. So when Steelbeak takes a shot at Dewey, Launchpad jumps in the way to save Dewey being struck. So Steelbeak takes Dewey hostage, but Launchpad wakes up super intelligent. So he infiltrates, disguised as one of the eggheads, and he's able to gain data on what FOWL is up to, learning of their presence in this operation and what they're planning to do with Scrooge. So he dons one of Steelbeak's suits and goes chasing after Steelbeak and Dewey. Man, but he does try to contact Scrooge and tell him what he's learned, but Scrooge is too caught up in his tickets and his winnings, having been convinced by Webby that he needs to turn in the tickets by the end of the day. And while he does try to call out to Dewey and tell him this is real, this is not VR, this is actually happening, Dewey can't hear him over the roar of the boats through the water. So he grapples onto the back of Steelbeak's boat, only to be sent into the bay by Steelbeak's Steelbeak, whereas Steelbeak heads to the lighthouse base in order to create a massive ray that will wash over not just St. Canard, but eventually the world. Launchpad catches up with Steelbeak. They have a fight where, Launchpad is shown to be very proficient in combat, much to the surprise of Steelbeak. So he realizes that Launchpad was made smarter by the ray instead of dumber, so he goes forward with the plan of making all of St. Canard stupid. But Launchpad exposits that, he set it too high. They'll be made so dumb they may very well forget how to breathe. But, when Launchpad keeps going on about stupidity, it triggers Steelbeak and he goes after Launchpad. But Launchpad notices something, that the rescue rangers have come in to save the day. They whip out a device that shocks Steelbeak and, he says adieu to the Rescue Rangers, and they're off to hopefully have their own spin off and sequel series. And as Launchpad tries to figure out how to shut this device down, he finds that it's locked in place, and there's only one option. So after freeing Dewey, he thinks about the fact of what he has to do, but he doesn't want to go back to being dumb. He feels that smart Launchpad is more valuable to Dewey. But Dewey tells him that, look, no matter what, you're always my friend, and I like you for you. So with this encouragement, Launchpad takes the shot point blank and falls into the bay, only for them to wake up back at Funzo's thinking that it was all part of the VR experience. Meanwhile, Scrooge, for all the tickets that he gathered, ended up finding out he was only able to get a simple comb. And while Launchpad, his inner Double O Duck tries to get, dumb Launchpad to tell Scrooge about FOWL and what they're up to, ultimately he's unable to remember any of that. And the McDuck clan goes about their day none the wiser. Meanwhile, director Buzzard had Bradford Buzzard, has managed to restore Black Heron's intelligence, and ultimately just goes off on both her and Steelbeak about what they did. Having said that, they created a whole mess of trouble for him. Had to lug Launchpad and Dewey back to Funzo to disguise their operation and make sure they were none the wiser. And he tells them, look, we're not out to destroy or conquer the world. We're not out to destroy the world, with rays or beams or any of that. We're here to take it over. We're here to steal the world. That is our goal. Don't forget it. So, it really goes to show. It's just and that's always the problem with bad guys. It's just oh, we want to destroy the world. No, we want to take it over. We want everything the world has to offer. We want all the money. We want all the power. That's what we're after. And I like a group that has their eyes on the prize. Get that money, you get the world. That's why politicians are in power. But ultimately, a fantastic episode episode. I love the return of Double O Duck. Launchpad as a secret agent is always a fun time, and I love that this was such a loving homage to that original episode that inspired so much. Who knew a James Bond parody could have led to so many interesting things. That's why FOWL even exists as a whole, because they were a James Bond parody. So it's just like, it just drives home so many incredible and fun things. But, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you love seeing Launchpad smarter? How did you feel about the VR angle of things? Would you have preferred them to play it straight? Because ultimately they kind of did with the involvement of Steelbeak and Black Heron, or would you have liked to have seen Red Feather and Odd Duck really be there and be a credible threat? An actual adventure against those James Bond pastiche. And what did you think about Steelbeak being dumbed down with the promise of him being smarter as time goes on? Would you have preferred a smarter Steelbeak, or do you feel that him being the dumb opposite to Launchpad in terms of villainy was a good call? I'm excited to hear your thoughts. But until next time, you know, please leave me a like if you liked this video, or a dislike if you didn't. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. And I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye bye.